The turkey was in the oven when I realized my husband was never coming back. I know that sounds dramatic, but you have to understand, I'd been basting that bird every 30 minutes for 3 hours, and Michael hadn't answered a single one of my calls. Thanksgiving was his favorite holiday. He never missed it. Never. I stood in our kitchen, the one we'd renovated 5 years ago with the marble countertops I didn't even want, holding my phone like it might suddenly ring if I squeezed it hard enough. The house was too quiet. You know that feeling when something's wrong but you can't quite put your finger on it? Like when you walk into a room and forget why you came in, except this was worse. This was walking into your own life and not recognizing it. If you're still here, welcome to Voice of Jenna, a place where stories aren't just told, they're felt. Here, we dive into real emotions, family drama, quiet heartbreaks, unexpected twists, and the moments that change us. So sit back, relax, and let me tell you what happened next. My name is Jennifer Hayes, and I'm 58 years old. I've been married to Michael for 25 years. 25 years of cooking his mother's Thanksgiving recipes, of folding his shirts the way he likes them, of being what everyone called the perfect wife. And on that Wednesday afternoon, standing in my kitchen with the smell of rosemary and butter filling the air, I finally understood what perfect really cost me. Let me back up. I'd spend the morning at my sister Diana's house, helping her with some boxes she needed moved from her garage. Michael was supposed to pick me up at 2 o'clock. We were going to come home together, finish the Thanksgiving prep, maybe watch a movie before bed. That was our tradition the night before Thanksgiving. Something quiet, just the two of us, before the chaos of family and food the next day. But 2 o'clock came and went. Then 3. Diana offered to drive me home, and I'd laughed it off. Michael probably got caught up at the office, I said. You know how he is, I said. Always losing track of time. Diana had given me this look, this sideways glance that I pretended not to notice, and drove me home anyway. The first thing I noticed when I walked in was the silence. Our house is never silent. Michael always has the television on or music playing, or he's on the phone with someone from work. But that afternoon, nothing. Just the hum of the refrigerator and my footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. I called out for him. Michael? Honey, I'm home. Nothing. I checked the garage. His car was gone. Okay, I thought he's running errands. He'll be back soon. So, I did what I always do. I started cooking. Put the turkey in, prepared the sweet potatoes, made the cranberry sauce from scratch because Michael hates the canned stuff. Kept myself busy, because that's what you do when you're trying not to think about something. But after 2 hours of cooking and calling and texting with no response, that uneasy feeling turned into something else. Something cold and sharp in my chest. I walked through the house, really looking this time. His toothbrush was gone from the bathroom. The photo of us from our anniversary trip last year, the one that usually sat on his nightstand, was missing. And when I opened his closet, my hands started shaking. Half his clothes were gone. Not random items. Specific things. His favorite suits. The cashmere sweater I'd given him for Christmas. His good shoes. This wasn't a man running errands. This was a man who'd packed. I sat down on our bed, the bed we'd shared for 2.5 decades, and tried to make sense of it. There had to be an explanation. Maybe he got called away for work. Maybe there was an emergency I didn't know about. Maybe. But deep down, in that place where we keep the truths we don't want to face, I knew something was very wrong. That's when I saw the note. It was on my pillow, folded in half, my name written on the outside in Michael's handwriting. My hands were trembling so badly, I almost couldn't open it. When I did, there were only 3 lines. Jennifer, I need some time away. I know this is sudden, but trust me, it's for the best. Thomas will explain everything. Please listen to him. Thomas. His stepfather. The man who'd married Michael's mother 30 years ago. The man who'd always given me the creeps even though I could never explain why. The man who made my skin crawl every time he hugged me a little too long at family gatherings. That Thomas was going to explain why my husband had abandoned me the day before Thanksgiving? I read the note 3 times, trying to find some hidden message, some clue I was missing. But there was nothing. Just those words. Trust Thomas. Listen to him. As if Michael had any right to tell me who to trust after disappearing without a real explanation. I was still sitting there, still holding that note, when I heard the front door open. My heart jumped. Michael. He came back. He realized this was insane, and he came back. I rushed down the stairs, already planning what I'd say, already preparing to either hug him or hit him. I hadn't decided which. But it wasn't Michael standing in my entryway. It was Thomas. 72 years old, tall and distinguished with his silver hair and expensive coat, carrying a leather overnight bag and looking at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. Concern, maybe. Or something else. Something that made that cold feeling in my chest spread to my stomach. "Jennifer," he said, his voice smooth and warm like he was greeting me at a dinner party. "I'm so glad I caught you. Michael called me this morning. He's very worried about you being alone for the holiday. He asked me to come stay, to make sure you're all right." I stared at him. Make sure I'm all right? Michael abandoned me and sent his stepfather to babysit me? None of this made any sense. I opened my mouth to tell him to leave, to say I didn't need anyone making sure I was all right, that I was a grown woman who'd been taking care of herself and everyone else for nearly 60 years. But before I could speak, Thomas stepped inside, closed the door behind him, and set his bag down in my hallway like he belonged there. Like he'd already decided he was staying, and my opinion on the matter was just a formality. "Where is Michael?" I managed to ask, my voice coming out smaller than I wanted it to. "What's going on?" Thomas smiled at me then. And I swear to you, I swear on everything I hold dear, that smile made every nerve in my body scream at me to run. But I didn't run. I stood there in my own home, smelling the turkey I'd been cooking for a husband who wasn't coming back, and waited for this man to explain why my entire world had just collapsed. He reached out and touched my shoulder, his hand heavy and warm through my sweater. "Let's sit down, Jennifer," he said softly. "We have a lot to talk about. And you're going to need to trust me now. Can you do that?" I looked into his eyes, and for the first time in my life, I understood what people meant when they said their blood ran cold. Because standing there in my front hallway, with this man's hand on my shoulder and my husband's note still crumpled in my fist, I realized something terrible. Whatever was happening, whatever Michael had done, I wasn't safe anymore. Not in my own home. Not with Thomas looking at me like that. Not with that smile that didn't reach his eyes. And the worst part? I had no idea it was going to get so much worse. He touched my shoulder, and every instinct in my body screamed run. But I didn't run. Because here's the thing about women like me, women who've spent their whole lives being polite and accommodating and nice. We ignore our instincts. We tell ourselves we're being silly, dramatic, paranoid. We smile when we want to scream. And that afternoon, standing in my hallway with Thomas Garrett's hand on my shoulder, I did exactly what I'd been trained to do my whole life. I smiled back. "Come on," he said, guiding me toward the living room like I was a guest in my own home. "Let's get you comfortable. You've had a shock." A shock. That's what he called it. My husband disappearing the day before Thanksgiving was a shock. Like a surprise party or finding out you won $10 on a lottery ticket. Not like your entire world crumbling around you while you're basting a turkey. I let him lead me to the couch. I sat down. And I watched him move around my living room like he'd done it 1,000 times before, adjusting the curtains, turning on the lamp even though it was still afternoon, fluffing the pillows on the chair across from me before he sat down. Making himself at home. "Where's Michael?" I asked again. The question felt like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. "Where is my husband?" Thomas leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his expression so full of concern it almost looked genuine. "Jennifer," he said, and the way he said my name, slow and careful like I might break, made my skin crawl. "Michael's been under a tremendous amount of stress lately. Have you noticed?" I thought about it. Had Michael seemed stressed? He'd been distant, sure. Working late more often. But stressed? "I don't know," I said honestly. "He hasn't really talked to me about work in a while." Thomas nodded like this confirmed something he already knew. "That's part of the problem," he said. "Michael's been carrying so much, and he didn't want to burden you with it. He's protective of you that way. Always has been. There was something in the way he said protective that bothered me, but I couldn't put my finger on why. What kind of stress? I asked. Is it the business? Is he in some kind of trouble? The business is fine, Thomas said, waving his hand dismissively. This is more personal, more complicated. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I felt like a butterfly pinned to a board. Michael's been questioning things. His marriage. His life. Where he's headed. My throat went dry. His marriage? Our marriage? Thomas sat back in the chair, crossing his legs like we were discussing the weather. I'm not going to lie to you, Jennifer. Michael came to me a few weeks ago, very upset, very confused. He said he felt trapped. That he'd married young and never really had time to figure out what he wanted. That he looks at his life now and wonders if he made the right choices. Each word felt like a punch to the stomach. 25 years. We'd been married for 25 years. We had a son together. We had a life. And Michael had been telling his stepfather he felt trapped? Did he say that? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Did he use that word? Trapped? Thomas tilted his head, his expression sympathetic in a way that felt rehearsed. He did. I'm sorry, Jennifer. I know this is hard to hear. But he asked me specifically to be here with you because he knew you'd need support. He does care about you. He just needs time to figure things out. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking. I'd made Thanksgiving dinner 100 times. I'd supported Michael through graduate school, through starting his business, through his mother's death 2 years ago. I'd given up my own career plans to be the kind of wife he needed. And now he felt trapped? How long? I asked. How long has he been feeling this way? Thomas was quiet for a moment, and when I looked up, he was watching me with this intensity that made me want to look away. But I didn't. I held his gaze, waiting. If I'm being honest, he said slowly, I think Michael's been struggling for a long time. Years, maybe. He's just good at hiding it. Good at pretending everything's fine. But underneath, he's been drowning. Years. The word echoed in my head. All those years I thought we were happy. He'd been drowning. All those family dinners and vacations and quiet Sunday mornings, he'd been pretending. And I'd been too stupid or too blind or too wrapped up in being the perfect wife to notice. I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but I wouldn't let them fall. Not in front of Thomas. Not in front of anyone. Where did he go? I asked. If he needed time, where is he? Thomas stood up then, walked over to the window, looked out at the street like he was checking for something. A hotel, he said. Somewhere quiet where he can think. He'll be back, Jennifer. He just needs a few days. A few days. Thanksgiving was tomorrow. Our son Brandon was deployed overseas and couldn't come home, but we always did a video call with him. We had traditions. We had plans. And Michael had just walked away from all of it because he felt trapped. I should call him, I said, reaching for my phone. We should talk about this. We should work through it together. That's what married people do. But Thomas turned from the window, his face serious. I wouldn't do that if I were you. He was very clear that he needs space. If you push him right now, you might push him away for good. Sometimes the best thing we can do for the people we love is give them room to breathe. Give them room to breathe. As if 25 years of marriage could be solved by some space and deep breathing. As if I was the one suffocating him just by existing. Thomas walked back over, sat down on the couch next to me. Not across from me anymore. Next to me. Close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and woody that Michael had never worn. He reached out and took my hand, and I was too stunned to pull away. You're a beautiful woman, Jennifer, he said quietly. Inside and out. I've always thought so. From the first day Michael brought you home to meet us, I told Carol, I told my late wife, that Michael was a lucky man. Some men don't appreciate what they have until it's gone. His thumb was moving across my knuckles, slow circles that made my stomach turn. I pulled my hand away, stood up quickly. I should check on the turkey, I said. It's probably done by now. I walked toward the kitchen, my legs unsteady, my mind racing. Something was very wrong here. The way Thomas talked about Michael, the way he looked at me, the way he'd invited himself to stay. None of it felt right. Jennifer, he called after me.
I meant what I said.
I'm here for you. Whatever you need. Day or night. I stopped in the kitchen doorway, my back to him. Thank you, I said, because that's what you're supposed to say. But what I was thinking was something completely different. What I was thinking was that I needed to find my husband. I needed to hear all of this from Michael's own mouth. Because nothing about Thomas Garrett's concerned stepfather routine felt genuine. It felt calculated. Practiced. Like a performance he'd been preparing for. I opened the oven. Pulled out the turkey. It was perfect. Golden brown, the skin crispy, the smell making my mouth water despite everything. I'd made this same turkey every year for 25 years. I could make it in my sleep. That's beautiful, Thomas said from right behind me. I hadn't heard him come into the kitchen. He was standing so close I could feel the heat from his body. You're an amazing cook, Jennifer. Michael never appreciated that enough. I set the turkey on the counter, my hands gripping the roasting pan so hard my knuckles went white. Thomas, I said carefully, I appreciate you coming. But I think I'd like to be alone tonight. This is a lot to process, and I need some time to think. He didn't move. For a long moment, he just stood there behind me, close enough to touch, and I held my breath waiting for him to step back. Finally, he did.
Of course, he said.
I understand completely. But Jennifer, I made a promise to Michael. I promised him I'd make sure you're all right. I can't leave you alone like this. Not when you're so upset. What kind of man would I be if I just walked away? The kind of man who respects boundaries, I wanted to say. The kind of man who understands that a woman might not want her husband's stepfather hovering over her when her marriage is falling apart. But I didn't say any of that. Because women like me, we've been taught that being direct is being rude. That setting boundaries is being difficult. So instead I said, I'm fine. Really? I just need to rest. Thomas smiled at me, and there was something in that smile that made my blood run cold. Something that said, he knew I wasn't fine. That he knew I was scared. And that he was glad. Why don't I stay in the guest room, he said. Just for tonight. That way you're not alone, but you have your space. I'll be here if you need anything. And tomorrow, we'll cook Thanksgiving dinner together. It'll be nice. Quiet. Just the two of us. Just the two of us. My husband was gone. My son was overseas. My sister was an hour away. And Thomas Garrett wanted to spend Thanksgiving alone with me. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to say no. To tell him to leave. To call someone, anyone, to come get me out of this house. But I looked at him standing there in my kitchen, looking so concerned and so reasonable, and I thought about how crazy I'd sound if I tried to explain why I was uncomfortable. He's being nice. He's trying to help. What would people think if I kicked out my husband's stepfather when he was just trying to support me? So I did what I'd done my whole life. I ignored my instincts. I smiled. And I said, okay. Thank you, Thomas. That's very kind of you. He reached out and touched my face, his palm warm against my cheek. Just his fingertips, barely a touch, but it felt like a violation. You're welcome, Jennifer, he said softly. I promise you, everything is going to work out exactly the way it's supposed to. And as I stood there in my kitchen with this man's hand on my face and my perfectly cooked turkey cooling on the counter, I realized something that terrified me more than anything else that had happened that day. I had no idea what Thomas meant by everything working out, but I was absolutely certain it had nothing to do with saving my marriage. My phone was exactly where I left it, except the battery was at 3%, and I'd charged it all night. I stood there in my bedroom at 7 a.m, staring at that little red battery icon, and felt the first real stab of fear pierce through the fog of confusion I'd been living in since yesterday. I'd plugged it in before bed. I always did. The charger was still connected to the wall, still plugged into my phone. But somehow, overnight, my fully charged phone had drained to almost nothing. I unplugged it, checked the charging port. Nothing looked wrong, but my hands were shaking as I pressed the power button to restart it. The house was quiet. I'd barely slept, lying in my bed listening to every creak and footstep, knowing Thomas was down the hall in our guest room. Our guest room. The room we'd decorated for when Brandon came home on leave, or when Diana visited. Now it housed my husband's stepfather, who'd made himself comfortable like he planned to stay a while. I'd heard him moving around at 2 in the morning. Footsteps in the hallway. The sound of a door opening and closing. At one point, I thought I heard him pause outside my bedroom door, and I'd held my breath until the footsteps moved away. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe he was just getting water or using the bathroom. But I'd locked my bedroom door anyway, something I'd never done in my own home before. My phone finally powered back on. Immediately, I tried calling Michael. It rang once, then went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. I sent a text. Michael, please call me. We need to talk. I need to hear from you that you're okay. The message showed as delivered but not read. I checked my call log from yesterday. All those calls I'd made to Michael, they were there. But there were other calls too. Calls I didn't remember making. 3 calls to Thomas's number, made at times when I knew I wasn't calling him. 1 at midnight. 2 at 3 in the morning. I hadn't made those calls. I'd been asleep. My stomach dropped. Someone had been using my phone while I slept. Someone had been in my room. I sat down on the bed, trying to breathe normally, trying not to panic. There had to be an explanation. Maybe I'd made those calls and forgotten. Maybe I'd been so upset that I'd called Thomas in my sleep, though I'd never sleepwalked or done anything like that in my entire life. Maybe. But the battery didn't lie. Something was draining it. Or someone was. I heard movement downstairs. The smell of coffee drifted up. Thomas was already awake, already making himself at home in my kitchen. I needed to get out of this house. I needed to go to Diana's or to a friend's house, or anywhere that wasn't here. I pulled on jeans and a sweater, grabbed my purse, and headed downstairs. Thomas was standing at my stove, making scrambled eggs. He'd found the apron I kept hanging on the pantry door, the one with the ridiculous saying about wine and cooking. He looked up when I came in and smiled that smile that never quite reached his eyes. "Good morning, Jennifer," he said cheerfully. "I hope you slept well. I made us breakfast. I thought we could go over the Thanksgiving menu together, make sure we have everything we need." I forced a smile, clutched my purse tighter. "Actually, I need to run out for a bit. Just some last-minute things. I'll be back in a couple hours." He set down the spatula, turned to face me fully. "Oh, what do you need? I can go get it for you. You shouldn't have to run errands on Thanksgiving morning. You should rest." "No," I said, maybe too quickly. "I appreciate it, but I need to get out of the house.
Clear my head.
You understand." His expression shifted just slightly. The concern was still there, but underneath it, something else flickered. Something I couldn't quite name, but didn't like. "Of course," he said slowly. "But Jennifer, I'm not sure that's a good idea. You're very emotional right now. Very vulnerable. Maybe you shouldn't be driving." "I'm fine," I said firmly. "I'm perfectly capable of driving to the store." He moved between me and the door. Not blocking it exactly, but close enough that I'd have to step around him.
"I really think you should stay here," he said.
"What if Michael calls? What if he comes back and you're not here? He might think you've given up on him." The manipulation was so smooth I almost didn't catch it. Almost. But I did. I heard it in the way he said given up on him, like Michael was the victim here. Like I was the one who'd done something wrong by wanting to leave my own house for a few hours. "I'll have my phone," I said, pulling it out of my purse to show him.
"See?
If Michael calls, I'll answer. But right now, I need some air." Thomas looked at my phone, and something crossed his face. Surprise, maybe. Or concern.
"May I?"
he asked, reaching for it. "I just want to make sure it's working properly. You mentioned yesterday it was acting up." I hadn't mentioned that. I'd thought it, but I hadn't said it out loud. But he was already taking the phone from my hand before I could protest, looking at it with a furrowed brow like he was genuinely trying to help. "The battery's very low," he said. "You should charge it before you go. Here, let me plug it in for you." "I charged it last night," I said, watching him carefully. "It was full when I went to bed." "Well, something's draining it," he said, walking over to the kitchen counter and plugging my phone into the charger there. "These smartphones, they're so complicated. All those apps running in the background. Let's give it 20 minutes to charge up, and then you can go." "Fair enough?" It wasn't fair. Nothing about this was fair. But he was standing there with my phone, plugged into his charger, and I couldn't think of a way to demand it back without sounding crazy. So I nodded.
20 minutes, I said. Perfect, he said brightly.
That gives us time to eat breakfast together.
Sit.
The eggs are getting cold. I sat at my own kitchen table and watched Thomas Garrett serve me breakfast like he was the host and I was the guest. He'd set the table with my good plates, the ones we only used for special occasions. He'd put out cloth napkins and poured orange juice into wine glasses like we were at a fancy brunch. "This is nice, isn't it?" he said, sitting across from me. "Just the two of us. Peaceful. Intimate." That word. Intimate. It hung in the air between us like something toxic. I picked up my fork, pushed the eggs around my plate. I wasn't hungry. The thought of eating anything made me nauseous. "You know, Jennifer," Thomas said, taking a sip of his coffee, "I've always admired you. The way you take care of Michael. The way you make a house a home. Carol used to do that. My late wife. She had that same gift. That same warmth." I remembered Carol. Michael's mother. She'd been kind but quiet, almost timid. In all the years I'd known her, I'd rarely heard her disagree with Thomas about anything. She died 2 years ago from a fall down the stairs. A terrible accident, everyone had said. She'd been alone in the house. Thomas had been at the country club. "You must miss her," I said softly, because it seemed like the right thing to say. "Every day," Thomas said, and for the first time, his expression looked genuine.
Truly sad.
"Every single day. She was irreplaceable. Or at least I thought she was." He looked at me then, and the hair on the back of my neck stood up. That look wasn't grief. It was something else entirely. Something that made me set down my fork and push back from the table. "I think the phone's charged enough," I said, standing up. "I really need to go." But Thomas stood too, faster than I expected for a man his age. "Jennifer, wait. There's something I need to tell you. Something Michael asked me to tell you when the time was right." My heart was pounding.
What?
He took a step closer. "Michael isn't coming back. Not for Thanksgiving. Not for a while. He's made some decisions, and they're going to be hard for you to hear. But I'm here to help you through it. You don't have to be alone." "What decisions?" My voice came out as a whisper.
What are you talking about?
Thomas reached out, and I stepped back. He paused, his hand hanging in the air between us. "I think you know," he said quietly. "I think you've known for a while that Michael hasn't been happy. That your marriage has been over in everything but name for years now. He's just finally found the courage to admit it."
No, I said.
"No, that's not true. We're fine. We're happy." "Are you?" Thomas asked. "Really? Because from where I'm standing, you look like a woman who's been trying to convince herself of that for a very long time." I felt tears burning in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "You don't know anything about my marriage," I said. "Don't I?" Thomas's voice was soft, almost gentle. "Jennifer, I've watched you for 25 years. I've seen how hard you try, how much you give, how little you get back. Michael takes you for granted. He always has. And you deserve so much better than that." He was saying everything I'd ever thought in my darkest moments, every doubt I'd ever pushed away. But hearing it from him in my kitchen, with my phone still in his charger and his hand reaching for mine, it didn't feel like comfort. It felt like a trap closing around me. "I need to go," I said again, more firmly this time.
Right now.
I moved toward the counter where my phone was charging, but Thomas was there first. He unplugged it, held it out to me.
"Of course," he said. "I'm sorry."
"I didn't mean to upset you.
Go.
Run your errands. Clear your head. I'll be here when you get back." I took the phone from him, nearly dropped it in my haste. The battery showed 15%. Not great, but enough. I had to get out. I had to think. I had to figure out what was happening. I grabbed my keys from the hook by the door and rushed to the garage. My car was sitting there, my reliable sedan that I'd had for 7 years. I got in, put the key in the ignition, and turned it. Nothing. I tried again. The engine made a clicking sound but wouldn't turn over. I tried a third time, a fourth time. Nothing. The battery was dead.
Completely dead.
My car that had worked perfectly fine 2 days ago now wouldn't start. I sat there in the driver's seat, my hands gripping the steering wheel, and felt the walls closing in. My phone dying overnight. Strange calls I didn't make. My car that wouldn't start. And Thomas, standing in my kitchen, telling me my marriage was over while touching me like he had the right. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't bad luck. This was planned. And I was trapped. He said it so casually, like he was commenting on the weather. I've loved you since the day Michael brought you home. Those 9 words, spoken over dinner plates and candlelight, changed everything I thought I knew about my life. I'd come back inside from the garage, shaking and confused, to find Thomas setting the table for an early Thanksgiving dinner. He'd insisted we eat, said it would calm my nerves, that everything would make more sense on a full stomach. And because I didn't know what else to do, because I was trapped in my own house with no phone that worked and no car that would start, I'd sat down. The turkey I'd made yesterday was perfectly carved on the table. The sweet potatoes I'd prepared. The cranberry sauce. Everything I'd cooked for a family Thanksgiving that would never happen. Thomas had even opened a bottle of wine, the expensive kind Michael kept for special occasions. You look beautiful in candlelight, Thomas had said, pouring wine into my glass. I used to watch you at family dinners and think how lucky Michael was. How he didn't appreciate what he had.
I should have gotten up then.
I should have locked myself in my room and called for help on my dying phone. But I was frozen, like a deer sensing the hunter, but not knowing which way to run. So, I just sat there while he told me he'd been in love with me for 25 years. Does that shock you? He asked, cutting into his turkey, like we were discussing the stock market. I suppose it does. You never noticed. You were always so focused on Michael, so devoted to being the perfect wife. But I noticed you, Jennifer. I noticed everything.
My mouth was dry.
I took a sip of wine just to have something to do with my hands. Thomas, I don't think this is appropriate. You're Michael's stepfather. Your family. He smiled at that. Family.
Yes.
That's been the problem all along, hasn't it? The only reason I couldn't tell you how I felt. The only thing standing between us. But now Michael's removed that obstacle, haven't he? He's given us an opportunity. An opportunity. Like my husband abandoning me was some kind of gift. Like my marriage falling apart was something Thomas had been waiting for. My stomach turned. I set down my fork. Michael didn't leave to give you an opportunity, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He left because he's confused. He'll come back. We'll work this out. Thomas leaned back in his chair, swirling the wine in his glass.
Will you?
Because from what Michael told me, he's quite certain this marriage is over. He's already consulted lawyers, Jennifer. He's already making plans for his new life. With someone new. The room tilted. Lawyers. Someone new.
No.
Michael wouldn't do that. Not without talking to me first. Not after 25 years. You're lying, I said. Thomas reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen a few times, then turned it toward me. There was a text message thread between him and Michael. I could see Michael's name at the top. And I could see the messages. Dad, thanks for handling this. I know Jennifer will take it hard, but it's for the best. Rebecca and I are going to start fresh somewhere. I just need you to keep Jennifer calm until the lawyers contact her. I don't want any drama. Rebecca. A name I didn't know. A woman my husband was apparently starting fresh with. And he'd called Thomas Dad, something he rarely did, something that seemed overly familiar in a text about ending his marriage. I felt like I was falling. Like the floor had opened up beneath me and I was tumbling into darkness. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. But there it was, in black and white, on Thomas's phone. My husband's words. My husband's betrayal. I'm sorry you had to see that, Thomas said softly, putting his phone away. But you needed to know the truth. Michael isn't coming back, Jennifer.
He's moved on.
And I think, deep down, you knew this was coming. You've known for a while that something was wrong. He was right. I had known. All those late nights at the office. The way Michael had stopped touching me, stopped really seeing me. The distance that had grown between us, so gradually I'd convinced myself it was normal, that all marriages went through phases like this. But I'd never imagined another woman. I'd never imagined him planning an entire new life without even telling me. Tears were running down my face now, and I couldn't stop them. 25 years. I'd given him 25 years. I'd put my own dreams on hold. I'd supported his career, raised our son, made his house a home. And this was how it ended? With a text message to his stepfather about keeping me calm? Thomas got up from his chair and came around the table. He knelt beside me, took my hand. I was too broken to pull away. Jennifer, he said, his voice warm and concerned, and everything a comforting friend should sound like. You don't have to go through this alone. I'm here. I've always been here. He reached up and wiped a tear from my cheek, his thumb gentle against my skin. And that's when he said it. That's when he told me he'd loved me since the day we met. That he'd watched me for decades, waiting for his chance. That Michael leaving was the best thing that could have happened because now, finally, we could be together. Together, I repeated, the word feeling foreign in my mouth. You think we're going to be together? Why not? Thomas asked, still kneeling beside me, still holding my hand. We're both alone now. Carol's been gone for 2 years. Michael's chosen someone else. We're two people who understand loss, who understand loneliness. We could comfort each other. We could build something beautiful out of this pain. I pulled my hand away, stood up so fast my chair nearly tipped over.
You're insane, I said.
I'm grieving my marriage, and you're proposing what? That I just jump from your stepson to you? That I forget 25 years because you've had some fantasy about me? His expression hardened. It's not a fantasy, he said, standing up. It's real. My feelings are real. And whether you want to admit it or not, you need me right now. You have no one else. I have my sister. I have friends. I have a whole life that doesn't involve you.
Do you?
Thomas asked, his voice taking on an edge I hadn't heard before. Because from where I'm standing, you're alone in this house with me. Your phone barely works. Your car won't start. Your husband has abandoned you. Who exactly is coming to save you, Jennifer? The threat was clear now. No more pretense of concern. No more gentle touches and soft words. This was the real Thomas Garrett, the man behind the mask. And I was trapped with him. I need you to leave, I said, trying to sound firm even though my voice was shaking.
Right now.
Get out of my house. Thomas smiled, but it wasn't warm anymore. It was cold and cruel and certain. This isn't your house, Jennifer. This house belongs to Michael. And when the divorce is final, when the lawyers are done, you'll have nothing. No house. No money. No husband. No life. Unless you're smart. Unless you accept what I'm offering you. I'm not accepting anything from you, I said. Get out. He moved closer, and I backed away until I hit the wall. I'm not going anywhere, he said quietly. I made a promise to Michael. I promised to take care of you. And I always keep my promises. Whether you like it or not, Jennifer, I'm staying. We're spending Thanksgiving together. And by the time I'm done, you're going to realize that I'm the best thing that ever happened to you. He walked past me then, so close I could feel his breath on my neck. I'm going to start a fire in the living room, he called back. Why don't you bring the pie when you've composed yourself? We'll have dessert and watch a movie. Like a real couple. I stood against that wall, shaking, crying, terrified. The house suddenly felt too big and too small at the same time. Too many rooms to hide in, but not enough space to escape. I could hear Thomas in the living room, moving furniture, humming to himself like this was the most normal evening in the world. I looked at the knife block on the counter, looked at the back door, looked at my phone on the table, the battery already down to 8% even though it had been charging. Every option felt impossible. Every escape route blocked. And that's when I understood. This wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't Thomas taking advantage of a bad situation. This was planned. The dead car battery. The drained phone. Michael leaving. All of it had been orchestrated. Thomas hadn't just been waiting for his chance. He'd created it. In the album, my face had been cut out of every single picture and pasted in with someone else. Someone younger. Someone who looked terrified. I stood there in Thomas's bedroom at 2 a.m, holding that photo album with shaking hands, and finally understood what kind of danger I was in. Let me back up. After dinner, after Thomas's confession, I'd pretended to go along with it. I'd brought him pie. I'd sat on the opposite end of the couch while he watched some old movie, talking the whole time about how nice this was, how right it felt, how we'd have many more nights like this. And I'd smiled and nodded and waited for him to get tired, waited for him to let his guard down. Around midnight, I heard him go upstairs to the guest room. I heard the door close. I waited another hour, sitting in the dark in my bedroom, listening. When I was sure he was asleep, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went through his things. I had to know. I had to understand what I was dealing with. Because nothing about this made sense. Thomas was 72 years old, wealthy, respected in the community. Why would he go to all this trouble? Why would he sabotage my marriage, trap me in my own house, confess his feelings like some obsessed teenager? There had to be more to this. There had to be something I was missing. His overnight bag was in the guest room, but I didn't need to search it. Because what I found was so much worse. Under the guest bed, pushed way back against the wall where you'd only find it if you were looking, was a storage box. The kind you use for important papers or photos. The kind you hide. Inside that box was my entire life. Photos of me from the past 25 years. Pictures I didn't even know existed. Me at the grocery store. Me in my garden. Me getting out of my car. Some of these photos were recent. Some were from years ago. All of them were taken without my knowledge. Someone had been following me, watching me, documenting my life like I was some kind of project. And beneath the photos was the album. Our family album. The one Michael's mother Carol had kept. The one that went missing after she died. We'd looked for it, wanted it for Brandon, but Thomas said he couldn't find it. Said Carol must have misplaced it. But he hadn't misplaced it. He'd taken it. And he destroyed it. Every photo of me and Michael together, he'd carefully cut out my face. Just my face. Michael was still there, smiling at the camera, his arm around empty space where I used to be. And in some of the photos, Thomas had pasted in pictures of Carol. His dead wife's face where mine should be. Creating some twisted version of reality where Carol was Michael's wife, not me. I felt sick. This wasn't love. This wasn't even obsession. This was something darker, something broken and dangerous. I kept digging through the box, my hands trembling so badly I could barely hold the pages. That's when I found Carol's diary. A small leather journal, the kind you can buy at any bookstore. Carol's name was written on the inside cover in her neat handwriting. I'd only met her a handful of times before she married Thomas, but I remembered her being kind, quiet, almost too quiet, like she was always afraid of saying the wrong thing. Now I knew why. I flipped through the pages, my heart pounding. The entries started normal enough. Grocery lists. Reminders about doctor's appointments. But then, about 6 months before her death, the tone changed. Thomas watches me constantly, one entry read. I can't go anywhere without him asking where I've been, who I talked to, what I said. He checks my phone. He times my trips to the store. I feel like I'm suffocating. Another entry, a month later. I try to tell Michael about his father, but he won't listen. He says I'm imagining things, that Thomas is just concerned about me. But this isn't concern. This is control. I'm scared. And then, just 2 weeks before she died, I found photos in Thomas's office. Photos of Jennifer.
Hundreds of them.
Some from years ago, some recent. He's been following her, watching her. And when I confronted him about it, he said she should have been his. That Michael stole her. That if I told anyone, I'd regret it. I don't know what to do. I don't know who to trust. The final entry was dated 3 days before Carol died. I'm leaving. I've packed a bag. I've called my sister. Tomorrow morning, while Thomas is at his golf game, I'm going to walk out of this house and never come back. I just need to survive until tomorrow. But Carol didn't survive until tomorrow. She fell down the stairs. Or that's what Thomas told everyone. And looking at that diary, reading those words in her shaky handwriting, I knew with absolute certainty that Carol didn't fall. Thomas pushed her. He'd killed his wife because she was going to leave him. Because she'd discovered his obsession with me. I sat on that guest room floor with Carol's diary in my hands and understood that I was next. Thomas had spent 25 years watching me, waiting for his chance. He'd driven Michael away, isolated me, trapped me in this house. And if I didn't find a way out, I was going to end up just like Carol. I shoved everything back in the box, pushed it under the bed exactly where I'd found it. My mind was racing. I needed evidence. I needed proof. I needed someone to believe me because I could already hear how this would sound. A woman going through a divorce, accusing her husband's respected stepfather of stalking and murder based on some photos and an old diary. Who would believe me? I crept back to my bedroom, locked the door, and grabbed my phone. 5% battery. I had to make this count. I opened my messages and texted Diana. My sister. The only person I trusted completely. Diana, I need help. I'm not safe. Thomas has been watching me for years. He killed Carol. I found proof. Please come get me. Don't tell anyone. Just come. I hit send and watched the message go through. Then I waited. 1 minute. 2 minutes.
Come on, Diana. Answer.
But my phone stayed silent. And then I heard it. A phone buzzing. Not my phone. Another phone. Somewhere in the house. I held my breath, listening. It was coming from downstairs. From the living room. That buzzing sound that meant a text message had come through. My blood ran cold. There was only one phone that should be getting messages right now. Diana's. Which meant Diana's phone was in my house. But Diana wasn't here. I hadn't seen her since yesterday morning when she dropped me off. Unless Thomas had Diana's phone. Unless he'd taken it somehow. Unless he'd been intercepting my messages this whole time. I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate footsteps coming toward my room. I looked at my door. The lock was a simple push-button lock, the kind you could open with a coin or a screwdriver. The kind that was meant for privacy, not security. It wouldn't keep anyone out if they really wanted to get in. Jennifer, Thomas's voice came through the door, calm and measured. I know you're awake. I heard you moving around. Why don't you open the door so we can talk? I didn't answer. I backed away from the door, looking for anything I could use as a weapon. My lamp, my bedside table, the window. Could I fit through the window? Could I jump from the second floor without breaking something? I found something interesting tonight, Thomas continued. A storage box. Under the guest bed. Funny thing about that box. I keep it in a very specific position. And when I checked just now, it had been moved. Someone's been going through my personal belongings, Jennifer. That's not very polite. My heart was hammering so hard I thought he must be able to hear it through the door. I'm calling the police, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. I know what you did to Carol. I have her diary. I have proof. Thomas laughed. It was a sound that made my skin crawl. The police? With what phone, Jennifer? The one that's about to die? The one I've been controlling since I got here? Go ahead. Try to call them. See what happens. I looked at my phone. 2%. I tried to dial 911 anyway, my fingers fumbling on the screen. But before I could hit the call button, my phone went black.
Dead. Completely dead.
You have nothing, Thomas said through the door. No phone. No car. No proof that anyone will believe. Carol's diary? That could say anything. Those photos? I'm a photographer. I take pictures of family.
There's nothing illegal about that.
And if you try to tell anyone about this, they'll just think you're a woman having a breakdown because your husband left you. He was right. He'd thought of everything. Covered every angle. I was trapped in my bedroom with a locked door that wouldn't hold and no way to call for help. Jennifer, Thomas said, and his voice got softer, more dangerous. I'm going to give you a choice. You can open this door right now and we can talk about this like adults. We can figure out how to move forward together. Or I can open it myself. And trust me, you won't like what happens if I have to do that. I looked at that door. I looked at the window. And I made a decision. I wasn't going to wait for him to break in. I wasn't going to be Carol, trapped and afraid and hoping someone would save me. I was going to save myself. I grabbed my heavy lamp, yanked the cord from the wall, and held it like a weapon. Then I did something that surprised even me. I unlocked the door and opened it. Thomas was standing there in the hallway, still in his pajamas, looking at me with that same calm expression. And when he saw the lamp in my hands, he smiled. "There she is," he said softly. "There's the fight I knew was in you. Carol never fought back. But you're different, aren't you? You're stronger. That's why I chose you." "Get out of my house," I said, my voice shaking but loud. "Get out, or I swear I will hurt you." Thomas took a step forward.
"You won't," he said.
"Because you're not that kind of person. You're kind, gentle. You've spent your whole life taking care of people, not hurting them. It's not in your nature."
He took another step.
"Try me," I said, raising the lamp higher. And that's when the doorbell rang. At 2:30 in the morning, someone was at my front door. Thomas froze. I froze. We both looked toward the stairs, toward that sound that meant someone else was here. Someone who could help me. The doorbell rang again. Then a knock. Hard and insistent. And then a voice I recognized. A voice that made me want to cry with relief. "Jennifer." Diana's voice called through the door. "Jennifer, open up. I know you're in there. I got your text." Thomas's expression changed. The calm mask cracked. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw real anger in his eyes. "You told her," he said. I smiled. "Actually," I said, "I think you told her. When you had her phone." The pounding on the door got louder. "Jennifer," Diana shouted. "I'm calling the police right now if you don't answer." Thomas grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to hurt. "You're going to go down there," he hissed. "You're going to tell her everything's fine. You're going to send her away. And if you don't, I'll make sure she has an accident on her way home. Just like Carol had an accident." But I wasn't Carol. And I wasn't alone anymore. I twisted out of his grip, swung that lamp as hard as I could, and hit him square in the shoulder. He stumbled back, more surprised than hurt, and I ran. I ran down those stairs faster than I'd ever moved in my life, and I threw open that front door. Diana was standing there with her phone in her hand, her eyes wide with fear. And behind her were 2 police cars with their lights flashing. I collapsed into my sister's arms and finally let myself cry. The detective said 3 words that changed everything. "He's done this before." I was sitting in Diana's living room wrapped in a blanket, drinking tea I couldn't taste, while 2 police officers stood in my sister's kitchen discussing my life like it was a case file. Which I suppose it was now. It happened 6 hours since Diana showed up at my door. 6 hours since I'd hit Thomas with that lamp and run for my life. 6 hours since the police had arrested him in my hallway while he screamed that I was lying, that I was unstable, that I'd attacked him for no reason. But the officers had seen the photos. They'd read Carol's diary. And when they'd searched Thomas more thoroughly, they'd found something I hadn't even known to look for. A key to my house.
On his keychain.
A key I'd never given him. Which meant he'd been coming and going as he pleased, probably for months. Maybe years. Detective Maria Chin sat down across from me, her expression kind but serious. She was in her 40s, I'd guess, with short black hair and eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. "Mrs. Hayes," she said gently, "I need to ask you some questions. I know you're exhausted, but the more you can tell us now, the better." I nodded. Diana sat next to me, holding my hand. "Ask me anything." "How long has Thomas Garrett been exhibiting this behavior?" the detective asked. "The stalking, the obsessive attention, the control?" I thought about it.
Really thought about it.
25 years, I said finally. Since the day I married Michael. But I didn't realize it was abnormal. I thought he was just being a good father-in-law. Attentive. Concerned. Detective Chin wrote something in her notebook. "Did he ever touch you inappropriately? Make advances before last night?" I shook my head.
No, never.
That's what made it so shocking. He'd always been proper. Respectful, even. Until yesterday, I would have said he was one of the good ones. You know? One of those older men who actually respects women, who treats his daughter-in-law like family. And that's exactly what he was counting on, Diana said, her voice tight with anger. He knew if he played the part long enough, you'd never suspect him. None of us would. Detective Chin nodded. Mr. Garrett is what we call a sophisticated predator. He's patient. He plans. He waits for the perfect opportunity. And then he strikes. She paused, looking at me with something like pity. Mrs. Hayes, I need to tell you something. Thomas Garrett's first wife, Margaret, died 35 years ago. She fell down the stairs. My blood ran cold. Just like Carol. Just like Carol, the detective confirmed. At the time, it was ruled an accident. Margaret had been drinking, had a history of depression. No one questioned it. But after what we've found tonight, we're reopening that investigation. And we're looking into 3 other women who were close to Thomas over the years. Women who had accidents or disappeared. Women who looked remarkably like you. I felt Diana's hand tighten around mine. 3 other women? How many people had Thomas hurt? How many lives had he destroyed while everyone thought he was this respectable, charming man? There's more, Detective Chin said. We contacted your husband, Michael Hayes. He's agreed to come in for questioning tomorrow. And Mrs. Hayes, I need you to prepare yourself for this. It appears your husband may have been aware of some aspects of his stepfather's behavior. My stomach dropped. What do you mean, aware? The detective pulled out a tablet, tapped the screen a few times, then turned it toward me. These are text messages between Michael Hayes and Thomas Garrett. They go back 6 months. She scrolled through, and I read words that made me want to vomit. Michael to Thomas, she's driving me crazy.
So needy.
So clingy. I don't know how much more I can take. Thomas to Michael, you know you have options. Rebecca is lovely.
Young.
Uncomplicated. Michael to Thomas, I can't just leave Jennifer. She'd take everything. The house, the money, all of it. Thomas to Michael, not if we're smart about it. Not if we make her seem unstable. Difficult. I'll help you. Trust me. The messages went on. Months of planning. Months of Thomas coaching Michael on how to leave me, how to protect his assets, how to make me look like the problem. And woven through it all were Thomas's comments about me. How beautiful I was. How wasted I was on Michael. How he'd take care of me when Michael was gone. Did Michael know his stepfather was in love with me? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Detective Chin scrolled further. Read this one. Michael to Thomas. I know you've always had a thing for Jennifer. Honestly, if you want to try your luck after I'm gone, be my guest. Maybe she'll be happier with you. God knows I'm done trying. I thought I'd felt betrayal before. I thought I'd hit the bottom of how much one person could hurt. But this was different. This wasn't just Michael leaving me. This was Michael offering me to his stepfather, like I was property to be traded. Like 25 years of marriage meant so little that he could joke about handing me over to someone else. Diana was crying. I wasn't. I was past crying. I was somewhere beyond hurt, in that cold, clear place where you finally see the truth of things. Where you stop making excuses and start making plans. There's a woman, I said to the detective. Rebecca. Michael's been having an affair with her. Thomas arranged it. She's part of this too. We know, Detective Chin said. We've already contacted her. She's on her way to the station now. According to the messages, Thomas met Rebecca at one of his business dinners and specifically introduced her to Michael. He even paid for their hotel rooms. He orchestrated the entire affair.
Why? I asked.
Why would he do that? Why would a father help his son cheat on his wife? Because he wanted you single, Diana said, her voice shaking with rage. He wanted Michael out of the way. He's been planning this for years, Jennifer. Getting Michael to fall for someone else, convincing him to leave you, isolating you. All of it was designed to make you vulnerable so Thomas could swoop in and play the hero. The detective nodded. It's a classic pattern. Destroy the victim's support system. Make them dependent. Make them feel like you're the only one who cares. And when you're at your lowest, that's when he makes his move. I stood up, the blanket falling from my shoulders. I need to see him, I said. Thomas. I need to talk to him. Detective Chin frowned. Mrs. Hayes, I don't think that's a good idea. You've been through a trauma. You need to rest, process all of this. No, I said firmly. I need him to see me. I need him to see that he didn't break me. That all of this, all of his planning and manipulation and evil, didn't work. I'm still here. I'm still standing. And I'm going to make sure he pays for what he did to Carol, to Margaret, to me, to everyone. Diana stood up with me. I'm going with you, she said. You're not facing him alone, ever again. And that's how, at 8 o'clock on Thanksgiving morning, I ended up sitting across from Thomas Garrett in an interrogation room at the police station. He was handcuffed to the table, his silver hair mussed, his expensive shirt wrinkled. He looked old, smaller somehow. Not the intimidating figure who'd terrorized me for the past 2 days. When he saw me walk in, his face lit up. Jennifer, he said, leaning forward as far as the handcuffs would allow. Thank God. Tell them this is all a misunderstanding. Tell them I was just trying to help you. They're treating me like a criminal. I sat down across from him, Diana beside me, Detective Chun standing by the door. I didn't say anything at first. I just looked at him. Really looked at him. And I saw what I should have seen years ago. The coldness behind his eyes. The calculation in every expression. The complete absence of real human feeling. You killed your wives, I said. Margaret and Carol. You murdered them because they tried to leave you. Thomas's smile faded. That's ridiculous. They fell. Tragic accidents, both of them. You've been stalking me for 25 years, I continued. Taking photos of me, without my knowledge. Fantasizing about me. Planning how to make me yours. I loved you, Thomas said, his voice taking on that soft, reasonable tone he'd used in my kitchen. Is that so wrong? To love someone? To want to be with them? You manipulated my husband into leaving me, I said, my voice getting stronger. You arranged his affair. You sabotaged my marriage. You trapped me in my own house. You threatened to kill my sister. That's not love. That's not even close to love. Thomas's expression changed. The mask finally dropped completely. You don't understand, he said, his voice hard now. I gave you everything. I waited 25 years for you. 25 years of watching Michael waste you, ignore you, take you for granted. I would have worshipped you. I would have given you a life beyond your imagination. And you hit me with a lamp.
Good, I said.
I should have hit you harder. He lunged forward, the handcuffs jerking him back. You ungrateful little thing, he snarled. Do you know what I've done for you? The opportunities I've created? The obstacles I've removed? You should be thanking me. You should be begging me to take you back. Take me back? I laughed, and it felt good. It felt powerful. Thomas, you never had me. Not for 1 second. And now, everyone knows what you are. Everyone knows about the photos, the diary, the murders. Your reputation?
Gone.
Your freedom?
Gone.
Your fantasy about us being together?
Dead.
Just like your wives. His face went purple with rage. You'll regret this, he said. When Michael takes everything in the divorce, when you're alone and broke and no one wants you, you'll remember that I was the only one who truly wanted you. And you threw it away. I stood up. I already have everything I need, I said. I have my life, my freedom, my sister, my son, and most importantly, I have the truth. Something you've been hiding from for decades. But not anymore. Now, everyone sees you for exactly what you are. A pathetic old man who has to destroy women's lives because no one would choose to be with him otherwise. I walked to the door, Diana with me. Detective Chin opened it, but before I left, I turned back one more time. Oh, and Thomas? I said. Happy Thanksgiving. His screaming followed me down the hallway, but I didn't look back. I was done looking back. I was done with fear and doubt and trying to make sense of evil. I was done being the woman who ignored her instincts and smiled when she wanted to scream. Outside the police station, the sun was coming up. It was Thanksgiving morning. And for the first time in 48 hours, I could breathe. Really breathe. Diana put her arm around me, and we stood there watching the sunrise together. It's not over, she said quietly. Michael still has to face consequences. The divorce. The legal battles. All of it. I know, I said. But I'll be okay. Better than okay. I'll be free. And standing there in the dawn light with my sister beside me, I knew it was true. Thomas hadn't broken me. He'd freed me. Freed me from a marriage that was already over. Freed me from being the kind of woman who accepts less than she deserves. Freed me to become whoever I wanted to be next. The detective came out to join us. "Rebecca's giving a full statement," she said. She had no idea about Thomas's obsession. He told her Michael was in a loveless marriage and needed help moving on. She feels horrible. She wants to testify against both of them. Both of them, I repeated. Michael too? Michael's being charged as an accessory, Detective Chin said. He knew about the stalking photos. He knew his stepfather had an unhealthy fixation, and he used it to his advantage to get out of the marriage without financial consequences. That makes him complicit. Good, Diana said fiercely. He deserves whatever he gets. And just like that, my old life was truly over. My marriage, my home, my identity as Michael's wife. All of it was gone. And instead of feeling lost, I felt light. Like I'd been carrying a weight for so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. Come on, Diana said. Let's go home. I'm making Thanksgiving dinner. Just us. And we're going to eat and drink and celebrate the fact that you're alive and safe and never have to see Thomas Garrett or Michael Hayes again unless it's in a courtroom. That sounds perfect, I said. And it did. It really did. My lawyer said 3 words that changed everything. You own everything. I sat in her office 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, still processing the wreckage of my old life, and tried to understand what she was telling me. Everything? I repeated. What do you mean? Patricia Morrison was 55, sharp as a knife, and, according to Diana, the best divorce attorney in the state. She leaned forward across her mahogany desk, her reading glasses perched on her nose, and smiled like a cat who'd caught a very stupid mouse. I mean, Jennifer, that your husband made several critical mistakes. First, he tried to forge your signature on property transfer documents. Second, he conspired with his stepfather to defraud you. Third, and this is the big one, the house you live in was inherited from your parents. It's in your name only. Michael has no legal claim to it whatsoever. But he said I started, then stopped. He'd said a lot of things. That the house belonged to him. That I'd have nothing. That his lawyers would take everything. All lies. Carefully crafted lies designed to make me feel powerless. To make me dependent on Thomas. What your husband said, and what the law says are 2 very different things, Patricia continued. She slid a folder across the desk. The retirement accounts are joint. The business he started is marital property. You're entitled to half of everything he's earned during your marriage. And given his behavior, his conspiracy with Thomas, his adultery, I'm confident we can get you significantly more than half. I opened the folder, looked at numbers that made my head spin. 25 years of Michael's earnings. His business value. Properties I didn't even know he'd invested in. It was more money than I'd ever thought about, let alone had access to. How much? I asked. Conservatively? Patricia said. 3.2 million. Possibly more, if we push. I sat back in my chair, stunned. $3 million. I'd spent 25 years worried about grocery budgets and saving for Brandon's college fund and buying Michael's clothes on sale. And all this time, there had been millions of dollars I'd never even known about. He hid this from me, I said quietly. All of it. Patricia nodded. Financial abuse is more common than people realize. He controlled the money, which gave him control over you. Made you feel like you couldn't leave even if you wanted to. Made you dependent. I thought about all the times I'd asked Michael about our finances, and he told me not to worry about it, that he had it handled. All the times I'd felt guilty for spending money on myself. All the times I'd made do with less because I thought we needed to be careful. And he'd had millions. Millions he'd kept from me, while making me feel like I was a burden. What about Thomas? I asked. What happens to him? Patricia's expression darkened. Thomas Garrett is facing multiple charges. Stalking, harassment, conspiracy to commit fraud, and they're building cases for the deaths of his wives. Detective Chun tells me they've found evidence in his home. More photos. More diaries. Computer files going back decades. He's not getting out of prison, Jennifer. Not in this lifetime. Good, I said, and meant it. I know I'm supposed to feel something else.
Pity, maybe. Or sadness.
But I don't. I just feel relieved. You don't owe that man anything, Patricia said firmly. Not guilt, not sympathy, not a single thought.
He terrorized you.
He murdered women. He tried to destroy your life. Feeling relieved that he's locked up isn't wrong. It's healthy. Diana had been saying the same thing for 3 weeks. But hearing it from Patricia, from someone who dealt with cases like this professionally, made it feel more real. More okay. What about Michael? I asked. Will he go to prison too? Patricia hesitated. He's been charged as an accessory. But his lawyers are good, and he's cooperating with the investigation into Thomas. He'll likely get probation, community service, maybe house arrest. He won't do serious time. That doesn't seem fair, I said. He knew. He knew what Thomas was doing, and he used it to hurt me. Life isn't fair, Patricia said. But here's what we can control. We can make sure he pays financially. We can make sure everyone in your community knows what he did. We can make sure his reputation is destroyed just like he tried to destroy yours. And we can make sure you walk away from this marriage with everything you deserve. I nodded slowly.
Okay.
Let's do that. All of it. Patricia smiled. That's what I like to hear. Now, there's something else we need to discuss. Rebecca Martin, the woman Michael was having an affair with. She's asked to meet with you. My stomach clenched. Why would she want to meet with me? She wants to apologize. She wants you to know she had no idea about Thomas's obsession or Michael's plans. She thought she was helping a man escape an unhappy marriage. She feels terrible. She should feel terrible, I said, more harshly than I intended. She slept with my husband. She did, Patricia agreed. And that was wrong. But Jennifer, she was manipulated too. Thomas targeted her specifically because she looked like you. He told her stories about Michael's terrible marriage. He paid for everything, made it easy. She's 28 years old. She didn't stand a chance against someone like Thomas. I thought about that. Thought about what it must have been like to be 28 and have a wealthy, charismatic older man tell you that you were helping someone. That you were doing a good thing. I'd spent 25 years falling for Thomas's act. How could I blame Rebecca for falling for it in a few months? Okay, I said finally. I'll meet with her. But not alone. You and Diana have to be there. Of course, Patricia said. We'll set it up for next week. The meeting happened at a coffee shop halfway between my sister's house and the city. Neutral ground. Diana sat on my right, Patricia on my left, and when Rebecca walked in, I understood why Thomas had chosen her. She looked like me. Or rather, like me 25 years ago. Same dark hair, same build, same uncertain way of moving through the world, like she wasn't quite sure she belonged. She sat down across from us, her hands shaking. Thank you for meeting me, she said quietly. I know you didn't have to. I didn't say anything at first. I just looked at her, this young woman who'd slept with my husband, and tried to find anger. But all I felt was tired. And maybe a little sad. For both of us. Why did you do it? I asked. Why did you sleep with a married man? Rebecca's eyes filled with tears.
I know how it sounds.
I know there's no good excuse. But Thomas told me Michael's wife was cruel. That she belittled him, controlled him, made him miserable. He showed me photos of Michael looking sad, and said his wife had done that to him. I thought I was helping. I thought I was saving him. And you believed that? Diana asked, her voice hard. You didn't think to ask Michael's wife her side of the story? I was stupid, Rebecca said. I was lonely and flattered and stupid. Thomas made me feel special. He said I reminded him of his late wife, that I was exactly what Michael needed. He paid for dinners, hotel rooms, everything. It felt like fate. Like I was meant to meet Michael. I didn't realize I was part of a plan. That I was being used. A tear ran down her cheek, and she wiped it away angrily. When the police told me the truth, when they showed me the photos Thomas had of you, when they explained what he'd been planning, I threw up. I literally got sick. Because I realized I'd been part of something evil. I'd helped destroy a marriage, so a sick old man could have what he wanted. Did you love him? I asked. Michael, did you actually love him? Rebecca looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the truth in her eyes before she spoke.
No, she said.
I thought I did, but looking back, I don't think I even knew him. He talked about his life, his business, his problems. But he never really asked about mine.
He never really saw me.
I was just someone young and uncomplicated who made him feel good about himself. That sounds like Michael, I said, and surprised myself by almost smiling. He's very good at making things about him. I'm so sorry, Rebecca said, her voice breaking.
I'm so sorry.
I can't take back what I did. I can't undo the damage. But I want you to know that I'm testifying against both of them. Thomas and Michael. I'm telling the court everything. Every lie they told me. Every conversation I overheard. Everything. Thank you, I said, and meant it. That takes courage. It's the least I can do, Rebecca said. She reached across the table, like she might take my hand, then thought better of it. Can I ask you something? I nodded. How do you do it? She asked. How do you stay strong after everything they did to you? How are you not falling apart? I thought about that question. Thought about the sleepless nights. The panic attacks. The moments when I'd wake up terrified that Thomas was in the house. The therapy sessions Diana had insisted I start. The medication for anxiety that I was too ashamed to tell most people about. I wasn't as strong as Rebecca thought. But I was still here. Still fighting. I'm not as strong as I look, I said honestly. Some days I can barely get out of bed. Some days I'm so angry I want to scream. But I have people who love me. My sister. My son. Friends who've rallied around me. And I have something else. I have a reason to keep going. What reason? Rebecca asked. Revenge, I said, and this time I did smile. Not the violent kind. The legal kind. I'm going to take everything from Michael. Every dollar he tried to hide from me. Every asset he thought was his. And then I'm going to use that money to help other women. Women who've been lied to and manipulated and made to feel small. I'm going to turn what Thomas and Michael did to me into something good. Diana squeezed my hand under the table. That's my sister, she said proudly. Patricia pulled out a business card, slid it across to Rebecca. If you need legal advice, she said, call me. Thomas manipulated you too. You might have claims against his estate. Rebecca took the card, held it like it was precious. Thank you. All of you. For not hating me. I don't hate you, I said, and realized it was true. You were a victim too. Just a different kind. After Rebecca left, the three of us sat there for a moment in silence. Finally, Diana spoke. So you're really doing it? Starting a business to help women? I am, I said. I've been thinking about it for weeks. Divorce consulting. Helping women navigate the legal system, understand their rights, recognize financial abuse. I'll use my settlement money to fund it. Hire lawyers, therapists, financial advisors. Make it affordable for women who can't afford Patricia's rates. Patricia raised her coffee cup. I'll do pro bono work for you. 1 day a week. Really? I asked. Really, she said. What Thomas did to you, what Michael did, it happens every day. Women get trapped in marriages because they don't understand their financial rights. Because they've been told they're not smart enough to handle money. Because men like Michael and Thomas make them feel dependent. If I can help stop that, I'm in. Diana raised her cup too. I'm in too. Whatever you need. Marketing, admin, someone to answer phones. I'm there. I looked at these two women, these two warriors who'd stood beside me through the worst weeks of my life, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Real hope. Not the kind you whisper to yourself in the dark. The kind you can build a life on. To new beginnings, I said, raising my own cup. To women who don't take crap anymore, Diana added. To making them pay, Patricia finished. We clinked our cups together, and I thought about Thomas sitting in a jail cell. About Michael losing everything he'd worked for. About Rebecca crying in her apartment, trying to make sense of how she'd been used. About Carol and Margaret, and all the women who'd been hurt by men who thought they had the right. And I thought about me. Jennifer Hayes. 58 years old. Divorced. Starting over. Scared but not broken. Hurt but not destroyed. And for the first time in my life, completely, utterly free. The business launched 6 months later. Hayes Advocacy Services. my name, my company, my purpose. We worked out of a small office Diana helped me set up. Patricia came in every Wednesday. We hired 2 more lawyers and a therapist. And on our first day of business, we had 12 women walk through the door. 12 women with stories like mine. 12 women who'd been told they were nothing without their husbands. 12 women who were ready to fight back. And I helped every single one of them. When I walked into that courtroom, Thomas smiled at me. I smiled back. And I watched that smile die when he realized I wasn't afraid anymore. It had been 8 months since that Thanksgiving. 8 months of therapy and legal battles and rebuilding my life piece by piece. 8 months of learning who I was without Michael, without fear, without the weight of trying to be perfect. And now, on this Tuesday morning in July, I was about to watch Thomas Garrett face justice for what he'd done. The courtroom was packed. I'd expected that. Cases like this, they draw attention. The wealthy businessman accused of murdering 2 wives and stalking his stepson's wife for decades. The local news had been covering it for months. But what I hadn't expected was how many women showed up to support me. Women from my advocacy service. Women I'd helped over the past 6 months. They filled 3 rows behind me, a silent wall of solidarity that made my throat tight with gratitude. Diana sat on my right. Brandon, my son, had flown in from his base overseas and sat on my left. He'd been devastated when he learned the truth. Angry at his father.
Protective of me.
But mostly just heartbroken that he hadn't been there when I needed him. I told him 100 times it wasn't his fault. That he couldn't have known. That I hadn't even known until it was almost too late. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Elaine Crawford, had prepared me for this day.
Told me what to expect.
How Thomas's lawyers would try to paint me as unstable, as a woman scorned, as someone who'd misinterpreted concern for obsession. How they'd argue that Carol and Margaret's deaths were tragic accidents and nothing more. How they'd try to make Thomas look like a victim of my imagination. But they couldn't argue with the evidence. The thousands of photos. The journals documenting his obsession. Carol's diary. Margaret's sister, who'd finally come forward to say she never believed her sister's death was an accident. The forensic evidence that showed both women had been pushed, not fallen. And Rebecca's testimony about how Thomas had orchestrated the entire affair. All rise, the bailiff announced, and we stood as the judge entered. Judge Patricia Morrison. No relation to my lawyer, but just as sharp, just as uncompromising. She was known for being tough on domestic violence cases. Thomas's lawyers had tried to get her removed from the case. They'd failed. The trial lasted 3 weeks. 3 weeks of testimony and evidence, and watching Thomas sit there in his expensive suit, looking like the respectable businessman everyone thought he was. 3 weeks of his lawyers trying to discredit me, Carol, Margaret, every woman who dared to say he was dangerous. But the hardest day was when I had to testify. When I had to sit on that witness stand and tell a room full of strangers about the worst days of my life. About coming home to find Michael gone. About Thomas trapping me in my house. About the photos and the threats and the moment I realized I might not survive. Elaine Crawford asked me to describe the night Diana came to rescue me. I did, my voice steady even though my hands were shaking. I told them about hitting Thomas with the lamp. About running down the stairs. About collapsing in my sister's arms while police lights flashed outside. And then Thomas's lawyer, a slick man in his 40s named David Chin, stood up for cross-examination. He smiled at me like we were old friends. Mrs. Hayes, he said, his voice smooth and reasonable. You've been through a difficult time.
A divorce.
Financial stress. The betrayal of infidelity. Isn't it possible that in your emotional state, you misinterpreted Mr. Garrett's genuine concern as something more sinister? No, I said firmly. It's not possible. But you admit you were emotionally distraught, he pressed.
Crying.
Upset. Not thinking clearly. I was upset because my husband had abandoned me and his stepfather was holding me prisoner in my own home, I said. I was thinking very clearly. Mr. Garrett says he was there to support you. That you became violent without provocation. That you attacked him. I attacked him because he told me he'd kill my sister if I didn't send her away, I said, looking directly at Thomas. Because he'd already killed his wives, and I knew I was next. Objection, Chin said quickly. Speculation. There's no proof Mr. Garrett killed anyone. Judge Morrison looked at him over her glasses. Overruled. The witness may answer. I looked at the jury. 12 people who would decide Thomas's fate. 12 people who needed to understand what kind of monster sat at that defense table.
He did kill them, I said.
Carol and Margaret. And he would have killed me too if Diana hadn't come. If the police hadn't been there. He told me himself that accidents happen. That Carol had an accident, and I could too. The courtroom was silent. Chun tried a few more questions, tried to shake my testimony, but I didn't waver. I'd spent 8 months preparing for this moment. 8 months getting stronger. I wasn't the frightened woman who'd opened her door to Thomas on that terrible Wednesday. I was someone new. Someone who wouldn't be intimidated or silenced. When I finally stepped down from the witness stand, Brandon squeezed my hand. You did great, Mom, he whispered. You were amazing. But the most powerful testimony came from someone I'd never expected. Rebecca Martin took the stand on the second week of trial, wearing a simple blue dress, her hands folded in her lap. She looked younger than her 28 years. Vulnerable. But when she spoke, her voice was strong. Elaine Crawford asked her to explain how she'd met Michael. Rebecca told the story clearly. Thomas had introduced them at a business dinner. Had told her Michael was trapped in a loveless marriage with a woman who didn't appreciate him. Had paid for their hotel rooms. Had encouraged the relationship at every turn. And did Mr. Garrett ever discuss Jennifer Hayes with you? Elaine asked. Yes, Rebecca said. He talked about her constantly. He said she was beautiful, but wasted on Michael. He showed me photos of her.
Dozens of them.
Photos she clearly didn't know existed. And he said that someday when Michael left her, she'd need someone to take care of her. Someone who really appreciated her. Did he say he planned to be that someone? Rebecca nodded. He said he'd been waiting 25 years. That Jennifer was always meant to be his. That Michael was just holding her until Thomas could have her. The jury looked at Thomas. Some with disgust. Some with horror. Thomas sat there expressionless, like none of this touched him. Like he was above it all. Did you believe you were helping Michael escape an unhappy marriage? Elaine asked. I did, Rebecca said, tears running down her face. I thought I was doing something good. I didn't realize I was part of a plan to isolate and trap Jennifer. I didn't realize Thomas was using both of us. And I will regret my part in this for the rest of my life. When Chun cross-examined Rebecca, he tried to paint her as a willing participant. A woman who'd knowingly destroyed a marriage. But Rebecca didn't break. She admitted her mistakes, owned her guilt, and made it clear that Thomas had manipulated her just as he'd manipulated everyone else. The final witness was Detective Maria Chin. She brought in boxes of evidence. Photos of me taken over 25 years. Journal entries detailing Thomas's obsession. Computer files showing he'd been tracking my movements, my purchases, my daily routine. Evidence from Margaret's case. Evidence from Carol's case. It was overwhelming, damning, undeniable. And then Elaine Crawford played the recording. The one I'd made on my phone that terrible Thanksgiving. Thomas's voice filled the courtroom, calm and chilling. I've loved you since the day Michael brought you home. Carol tried to stop me. Margaret tried to leave me. But you're different, Jennifer. You're stronger. That's why you're perfect. The recording went on. Thomas describing his plan. How he'd convinced Michael to leave. How he'd isolated me. How he'd planned to make me dependent on him. And then the threat. If you try to leave, you'll have an accident. Just like Carol. Just like Margaret. The jury sat there listening. Some looked sick. Some looked angry. All of them looked at Thomas like he was a monster. Because he was. The closing arguments came on a Friday. Elaine Crawford spoke for an hour, laying out every piece of evidence, every lie, every crime. She ended with this. Thomas Garrett is a predator who has spent decades hunting women. He chose them carefully, isolated them, controlled them, and when they tried to escape, he killed them. Jennifer Hayes survived only because she fought back, because she was stronger than he expected, because she refused to be another victim. Don't let him walk away from this. Don't let him hurt anyone else. Give these women justice. Chun argued that it was all circumstantial, that there was no direct evidence Thomas had killed anyone, that I was a scorned woman with an active imagination, that Rebecca was a homewrecker trying to avoid responsibility, that the photos and journals were just the hobbies of a lonely man who'd lost his wife. The jury deliberated for 2 days. 2 days of waiting. 2 days of wondering if they believed me, if they saw through Thomas's mask, if justice would actually happen. When they came back, I held Brandon's hand on one side and Diana's on the other. The foreman stood, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a firm voice. On the count of stalking, how do you find? The judge asked. Guilty, the foreman said. On the count of conspiracy to commit fraud?
Guilty.
On the count of harassment and unlawful imprisonment?
Guilty.
On the count of second-degree murder in the death of Carol Garrett?
Guilty.
On the count of second-degree murder in the death of Margaret Garrett?
Guilty.
7 guilty verdicts. 7 times that word echoed through the courtroom. 7 times Thomas Garrett's face went a little paler. And when it was done, when the judge thanked the jury and set a sentencing date, I finally let myself cry. Not from sadness. From relief. From vindication. From the knowledge that he would never hurt anyone again. The sentencing came 2 weeks later. Judge Morrison looked at Thomas with complete contempt. Mr. Garrett, she said, you are a predator who has destroyed countless lives. You have murdered 2 women and attempted to destroy a third. You have shown no remorse, no recognition of your crimes, no humanity. I hereby sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Life.
He would die in prison. He would never be free again. Never hurt another woman. Never smile that cold smile and pretend to be something he wasn't. As they led him away in handcuffs, Thomas looked at me one last time. The hatred in his eyes was clear.
Raw.
He opened his mouth to say something, but I turned away. He didn't deserve my attention. He didn't deserve my fear. He didn't deserve anything from me ever again. Outside the courthouse, I was surrounded by reporters, cameras, questions. But I only made one statement. To the women watching this, I said, my voice steady and clear. If someone makes you feel trapped, if someone isolates you from the people who love you, if someone tries to control your life, trust your instincts. Speak up. Ask for help. You're not crazy. You're not overreacting. And you're not alone. There are people who will believe you, who will fight for you, who will stand with you. Don't stay silent. Don't accept less than you deserve. And don't let anyone make you small. The women from my advocacy service cheered. Diana wrapped her arms around me. Brandon hugged us both. And standing there in the summer sun, I realized something important. Thomas had tried to break me. He'd tried to make me his. He'd tried to erase who I was and replace it with what he wanted. But he'd failed. I was still here. Still standing. Still fighting. And I was stronger than I'd ever been. Michael's trial was smaller. Quieter. He pleaded guilty to conspiracy and fraud. Got 3 years probation and had to pay me additional damages. I saw him briefly at his sentencing. He looked older. Smaller. He tried to apologize, but I walked past him without a word. He didn't deserve my forgiveness. He'd chosen his path. Now he had to live with it. Rebecca sent me a letter. I read it once, then filed it away. She was seeing a therapist, trying to understand how she'd been manipulated, trying to forgive herself. I hoped she'd find peace. She deserved that much. And me? I went back to work. Back to Hayes Advocacy Services. Back to helping women find their strength. Back to building the life I'd always deserved but never knew I could have. 1 year after that terrible Thanksgiving, I hosted a different kind of holiday dinner. 20 women gathered in my new office space. Women I'd helped through divorces. Women who'd escaped abusive situations. Women who'd found their voices and their power. We ate and laughed and told stories. And when it came time to say what we were grateful for, every single woman said the same thing. Freedom. We were grateful for freedom. I raised my glass to toast them. To the women who refused to stay silent, I said.
To the women who fought back.
To the women who survived. To all of us. They raised their glasses back. To all of us, they echoed. And in that moment, surrounded by warriors who'd faced their own demons and won, I finally understood what Thomas had never grasped. You can't break someone who knows their own worth. You can't control someone who understands their power. And you can't destroy someone who refuses to be a victim. I was 59 years old.
Divorced.
Running my own business. Living in a small apartment I loved. Dating occasionally, but in no rush.
Close to my son.
Closer to my sister.
Happy.
Genuinely, deeply happy. Thomas had tried to make me his. Instead, he'd set me free. And I would spend the rest of my life helping other women find that same freedom, that same strength, that same knowledge that they deserved better. Because we all did. Every single one of us. The woman sitting across from me was 56 years old, and she was shaking so hard she could barely hold her coffee cup. Her name was Linda. Her husband had just left her for a younger woman. His father was insisting on staying with her to help, making her feel uncomfortable, isolated, trapped. She looked at me with desperate eyes and said the words I'd heard 100 times before. I don't know if I'm being paranoid. I don't know if I'm crazy. Maybe I'm overreacting. I reached across my desk and took her hand. You're not crazy, I said firmly. You're not overreacting. And you're not alone. I know exactly what you're going through. Because 2 years ago, I was you. It had been 2 years since that Thanksgiving. 2 years since Thomas was sentenced to life in prison. 2 years since my divorce from Michael was finalized. 2 years since I'd started Hayes Advocacy Services in a tiny office with Diana answering phones and Patricia doing pro bono legal work 1 day a week. Now we had a full staff of 6. 3 lawyers, 2 therapists, and a financial advisor. We'd helped over 300 women navigate divorces, escape abusive situations, understand their rights, and rebuild their lives. And every single one of them had sat in that chair where Linda was sitting now. Every single one of them had said those same words. Am I crazy? Am I overreacting? And every single time, I'd told them the truth.
No.
You're not. Trust your instincts. Linda started crying. I thought I was losing my mind, she said. My husband's father keeps touching my shoulder, standing too close, saying things that sound nice but feel wrong. And everyone tells me he's just being supportive, that I should be grateful. But I'm not grateful. I'm terrified.
Tell me everything, I said.
From the beginning.
She did.
And as she talked, I heard my own story reflected back at me. The concerned father-in-law. The sudden departure of the husband. The isolation. The control. The feeling of being trapped in your own home while everyone else thought you were being taken care of. It was Thomas's playbook. The same patterns. The same manipulation. The same danger. When she finished, I pulled out a folder. This is what we're going to do, I said. First, we're going to get you somewhere safe tonight. My sister has a guest room, and you're staying there. No arguments. Second, we're going to document everything. Every text, every phone call, every interaction with your father-in-law. Third, we're going to get a restraining order. And fourth, we're going to make sure you get everything you deserve in this divorce. Every asset, every dollar, every piece of property. Are you ready to fight? Linda looked at me like I was offering her oxygen after drowning. Yes, she whispered. I'm ready. That night, I drove Linda to Diana's house myself. Helped her carry in the one bag she'd managed to pack. Diana met us at the door, hugged Linda like she was family, and said the same thing she'd said to me 2 years ago. You're safe now. We've got you. After Linda was settled, Diana and I sat in her kitchen drinking tea. How many is that this month? Diana asked. 12, I said. 12 women who've come in with similar stories. Older men. Younger wives or daughters-in-law. The same pattern Thomas used. Diana shook her head. How many of these predators are out there? Too many, I said. But at least now women have somewhere to go. Someone who believes them. Someone who's been through it and survived. You're doing good work, Jennifer, Diana said. Mom and Dad would be so proud of you. I felt tears prick my eyes. Our parents had died years ago, long before any of this happened. But I liked to think Diana was right. That they'd be proud of the woman I'd become. Not Michael's wife. Not the perfect hostess. Not the woman who made herself small to make others comfortable. But this woman. The one who fought back. The one who helped others fight back. The business kept growing. We started doing workshops. Teaching women how to recognize financial abuse. How to document evidence. How to protect themselves legally. How to rebuild their credit and their confidence. We partnered with domestic violence shelters. With police departments. With other lawyers and therapists who believed in what we were doing. And then, 6 months later, something happened that I never expected. I got a call from a publisher. They wanted me to write a book.
Tell my story.
Help other women recognize the warning signs before it was too late. I can't write a book, I told Diana. I'm not a writer. You're a storyteller, Diana said. You tell your story to every woman who walks through that door. You just need to write it down.
So I did.
I spent 6 months writing about Thomas. About Michael. About that terrible Thanksgiving and everything that came after. About Carol and Margaret and all the women who hadn't survived. About finding my strength. About building a new life. About refusing to be a victim. The book came out a year later. It was called A Replacement Wife. My story of survival, justice, and starting over. I didn't know if anyone would read it. I didn't know if it would matter. But within 3 months, it was on the bestseller list. Women were reaching out from all over the country. All over the world. Sharing their own stories. Thanking me for giving them the courage to leave. To speak up.
To fight back.
I started getting invited to speak at conferences. At universities. At women's groups. I'd stand on stage, 59 years old, and tell a room full of strangers the worst thing that ever happened to me. And every time, women would line up afterward to talk to me. To tell me their stories. To ask for help. To say thank you. One woman, probably in her 70s, grabbed my hands and said, I stayed in my marriage for 45 years because I thought I had to. Because I thought I had no choice. But listening to you, I realize I always had a choice. I'm leaving him tomorrow. And I started crying right there because that's why I did this. That's why I share my pain. To give other women permission to save themselves. Brandon came home for Christmas that year. He was 34 now, engaged to a wonderful woman named Sarah who worked as a nurse. They were getting married in the spring, and Brandon wanted me to help plan the wedding. Mom, he said over dinner at my apartment, I want you to know something. You're the strongest person I know. What you survived, what you built afterward, it's incredible. And I'm so proud to be your son. I hugged him tight, this man who used to be my little boy. Thank you, baby, I said. That means everything to me. Sarah spoke up then. My mother's in a bad marriage, she said quietly. She's been unhappy for years, but she thinks she's too old to leave. That she's too old to start over.
Would you talk to her? Of course, I said. Have her call me.
2 weeks later, I met Sarah's mother, Helen. She was 62, married for 38 years to a man who belittled her, controlled her money, and made her feel worthless. She sat in my office and said, I know it's too late for me. I'm too old to start over. I have nowhere to go. I leaned forward and looked her in the eye. Helen, I said, I was 58 when I left my marriage. 58 when I started my business. 58 when I began building the life I actually wanted. You're never too old. You're never too broken. You're never too far gone. If you want out, we'll help you. But you have to want it. Helen started crying. I do, she said. I want out. I want my life back. And 6 months later, Helen signed her divorce papers. She moved into a small condo by the beach. Started volunteering at an animal shelter. Began painting again. Something she'd loved as a young woman but had given up when she got married. At Brandon and Sarah's wedding, she pulled me aside and said, You gave me my life back. I don't know how to thank you. You just did, I said. The wedding was beautiful. Brandon and Sarah exchanged vows under an arch of flowers, promising to love and respect and support each other. Promising to be partners, not owner and property. Promising to build a life together based on equality and trust. And watching them, I felt something I hadn't expected.
Peace.
Complete, total peace. Michael wasn't there. Brandon had made that clear. After everything that happened, after all the lies and betrayal, Brandon had cut his father out of his life completely. He tried to maintain a relationship at first, but Michael kept making excuses. Kept blaming me for everything. Kept refusing to take responsibility. So Brandon stopped trying. I asked him once if he regretted it. Cutting off his father. Brandon had looked at me and said, "Mom, he tried to destroy you. He handed you over to a psychopath. He stole from you. He lied to everyone. Why would I want someone like that in my life? In Sarah's life? In my future children's lives?" And I couldn't argue with that. At the wedding reception, I gave a toast. I talked about love. Real love. The kind that builds you up instead of tearing you down. The kind that celebrates your strength instead of fearing it. The kind that sees you as a partner, not a possession. And I said, to Brandon and Sarah, may you always be each other's biggest supporters, fiercest protectors, and dearest friends. May you build a marriage based on respect and trust and genuine partnership. And may you always remember that love doesn't trap you. It sets you free. Everyone raised their glasses. Brandon was crying. Sarah was crying. I was crying. Diana was crying. It was perfect. Later that night, after most of the guests had left, I found myself outside on the venue's terrace, looking up at the stars. Diana came out to join me, 2 glasses of champagne in her hands. She handed me one, and we stood there in comfortable silence for a moment. "You did good, big sister," Diana said finally. "You survived hell and came out the other side stronger. You built a business that's helping hundreds of women. You wrote a book that's changing lives. You raised an incredible son. You should be so proud of yourself." "I am," I said, and realized
Sometimes
it was true.
I admitted I was proud,
but not as often as you
not
think.
because
He doesn't
I'd
deserve
survived,
space in my head,
but because I'd
he doesn't
thrived.
deserve my thoughts
Because I'd
or
taken
my
the worst
energy
thing that
or my
ever
time.
happened to me.
He
and
tried to
turned it
take
into
everything
something
meaningful, but he
something
didn't.
good.
And
Do you
that's
ever think
all
about
that
him?
matters. Diana
asked.
clinked her glass
Thomas,
against mine.
do you ever wonder
"To
what he's
freedom,"
thinking
she
in
said.
that prison cell?
"To freedom," I echoed. "And to new beginnings. And to becoming the women we were always meant to be." As I stood there under the stars, surrounded by love and hope and possibility, I thought about that terrible Thanksgiving 2 years ago. Thought about how scared I'd been. How trapped. How certain I wouldn't survive. And I thought about the woman I was now.
Strong,
Independent. Powerful.
happy.
Thomas had tried to make me his replacement wife. His possession. His victim. But instead, he'd given me something he never intended. He'd given me a reason to find my strength. To discover who I really was beneath all those years of trying to be what everyone else wanted. To build a life that was authentically, completely, beautifully mine. And standing there at my son's wedding, watching young love bloom while helping dozens of women escape the kind of danger I'd survived, I realized something important. Thomas Garrett had tried to destroy me. Instead, he'd created something far more dangerous to men like him. A woman who couldn't be silenced. Who wouldn't be controlled. Who would spend the rest of her life making sure other women knew they had choices. That they had power. That they deserved better. I was 60 years old. I was divorced. I was thriving. And I had never been happier in my entire life. The best revenge, I'd learned, wasn't getting even. It was living well. Living loudly. Living freely. And helping other women do the same. And that's exactly what I intended to do for the rest of my days. My granddaughter asked me, "Grandma, were you always this brave?" I looked at her, this beautiful 6-year-old with Brandon's eyes and Sarah's smile, and I said, "No, sweetheart. I learned." It was Thanksgiving again. 5 years after that terrible day that changed my life forever. 5 years since I'd walked into my house and found my world falling apart. 5 years since I discovered what I was truly capable of. But this Thanksgiving was different. This Thanksgiving, I was hosting dinner in my home. Not the house I'd shared with Michael. That I'd sold 3 years ago, used the money to expand Hayes advocacy services. No, this was my home. A comfortable 3-bedroom house with a garden I actually had time to tend, a kitchen where I cooked because I wanted to, not because someone expected it, and walls covered with photos of the people I loved and the life I'd built. 20 people were coming for dinner. Diana and her husband, Brandon, Sarah, and my granddaughter Emma. Patricia Morrison, my lawyer turned dear friend, and her partner, Rebecca Martin, who'd become an unlikely ally and friend over the years, helping us counsel younger women about manipulation tactics. 3 women from my advocacy service who had nowhere else to go for the holiday. And Helen, Sarah's mother, who just celebrated her 5th year of freedom from her terrible marriage. I stood in my kitchen that morning, pulling the turkey from the oven, and felt a wave of gratitude so strong it brought tears to my eyes. 5 years ago, I'd been basting a turkey while my world crumbled. Today, I was doing the same thing, but everything was different. I was different. Emma came running into the kitchen, her small feet pattering on the hardwood floor. Grandma, can I help with the pie? I lifted her up onto a stool next to me. Of course you can, sweetheart. You can help me with the whipped cream. As we worked together, Emma chattering about her school and her friends, I thought about legacy, about what we pass down to the next generation. I'd spent so many years teaching her father to be kind, to be respectful, to be strong. And now Brandon was teaching Emma those same values. But he was also teaching her something I'd had to learn the hard way. That she should never make herself small for anyone. That her voice mattered. That she deserved respect and love and partnership, not control and possession. Mommy says you help ladies who are sad, Emma said, carefully spooning whipped cream into a bowl. Is that true?
I do, I said.
I help women who are going through hard times. Women who need someone to believe them and support them. Were you sad once? Emma asked, looking up at me with those innocent eyes. I admitted. A long time ago, I was very sad.
And very scared.
But I had people who helped me. And now I help other people. That's nice, Emma said, then went back to her whipped cream with a simple acceptance of childhood. If only it were that simple, I thought. But I was grateful that for Emma, it could be simple. That she was growing up in a world where her grandmother ran a successful business. Where her mother was a respected nurse. Where the women in her life were strong and independent and unafraid. She wouldn't have to unlearn the lessons about being small that I'd had to unlearn. She'd grow up knowing her worth from the start. The guests started arriving around too. Diana came first, of course, carrying dishes and bossing everyone around like she always did. Then Patricia, with her dry humor and sharp wit. Then the others, one by one, until my house was full of laughter and conversation and life. Rebecca arrived last, carrying a bottle of wine and looking nervous. She still got nervous at gatherings, still worried that people would judge her for her part in what happened. But over the years, as she'd proven herself through her work with the advocacy service, as she'd helped dozens of young women recognize manipulation before it was too late, most people had come to accept her, to forgive her, to see her as I did, as another one of Thomas's victims who'd found her way to the other side. Jennifer, she said, handing me the wine. Thank you for including me. It means more than you know. Your family now, I said simply. And it was true. The family I'd built over these 5 years wasn't connected by blood or marriage. It was connected by something stronger. Survival. Understanding. The knowledge that we'd all fought our way through darkness and come out into the light together. As we all gathered around the table, the food spread out in front of us, I looked at these faces and felt overwhelmed with love. This was my family. These survivors. These warriors. These beautiful, strong, imperfect people who'd stood with me and fought with me and refused to let me fall. Before we eat, I said, standing up with my wine glass, I want to say something. 5 years ago, I came home for Thanksgiving and found my husband gone. I found myself trapped in a nightmare I never could have imagined. I found out that the life I thought I had was built on lies and manipulation and danger. And I thought it was the end of my world. The table was quiet, everyone listening. Emma was watching me with wide eyes, not understanding but sensing the importance of the moment. But it wasn't the end, I continued. It was the beginning of discovering who I really was. The beginning of building a life that was authentically mine. The beginning of helping other women find their strength. And the beginning of understanding what family really means. Not the people you're born to or married to, but the people who show up for you, who believe you, who stand with you no matter what. I looked at Diana, who was crying into her napkin, at Brandon, who nodded at me with pride in his eyes, at all these women who'd survived their own nightmares and were now sitting at my table, safe and loved and free. So today, I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I survived. I'm grateful that I found my voice. I'm grateful for every single person at this table. And I'm grateful that I get to spend my life helping other women find what we've all found. Freedom.
Strength. Hope.
The knowledge that we're never too old, never too broken, never too far gone to start over. To fight back.
To reclaim our lives.
I raised my glass higher. To the women who refused to stay silent. To the women who fought back. To the women who survived. To all of us. Everyone raised their glasses. To all of us, they echoed, their voices strong and clear and beautiful. We ate and laughed and told stories. The newer women, the ones who were just starting their journeys to freedom, listened as the rest of us shared our experiences. Our struggles. Our victories. Our moments of doubt and our moments of triumph. And I watched them absorb it, saw hope kindle in their eyes. If these women could survive, if they could thrive, maybe they could too. After dinner, while Emma was playing in the living room and the others were cleaning up, Helen pulled me aside. "I need to tell you something," she said, her eyes bright with excitement. "I've been accepted to nursing school. At 67 years old, I'm going back to school." "Helen," I said, hugging her tight. "That's wonderful."
"I never thought I could do it," she said.
"I spent so many years believing I was too old, too stupid, too worthless to do anything meaningful. But you showed me that's not true. That it's never too late. That we can reinvent ourselves at any age. So, I'm doing it. I'm becoming the person I always wanted to be." I felt tears running down my face.
"That's what it's all about," I said.
Becoming who we were always meant to be. Later that evening, after most of the guests had left, I found myself outside on my back porch with Diana. We sat in comfortable silence, wrapped in blankets, watching the stars come out. "This is nice," Diana said. "Peaceful.
Happy.
You deserve this, Jennifer. After everything you went through, you deserve all the happiness in the world." "We both do," I said. "You saved my life that night, Diana. If you hadn't shown up with the police, if you hadn't believed me, I don't know if I'd be here." "You'd have found a way," Diana said firmly. "That's who you are. A survivor. A fighter. Someone who doesn't give up."
"I wasn't always," I said.
5 years ago, I was someone who ignored her instincts, who made herself small, who tried to be perfect instead of real. Thomas tried to destroy me, but in a twisted way, he gave me a gift. He showed me that I was stronger than I ever knew, that I could survive things I never thought I could survive, that I could build a life I never dreamed I deserved.
"You've helped so many women," Diana said. "Hundreds of them.
Women who would still be trapped if it wasn't for you. That's your legacy, Jennifer. Not being Michael's wife, not being Thomas's victim, but being the woman who fought back and then helped others do the same." I thought about the advocacy service, about the book I'd written that was now in its 10th printing, about the women I'd spoken to, counseled, supported, about the laws we'd helped change to better protect victims of stalking and domestic abuse, about the awareness we'd raised, about the lives we'd saved. And I thought about Thomas, rotting in a prison cell. He'd tried to take everything from me. My marriage, my home, my life. But he'd failed. I was still here, still fighting, still helping, still thriving. And he was locked away where he could never hurt anyone again. I heard from his lawyer last month, I said quietly. "Thomas wants to see me. He says he has things he needs to say, apologies he needs to make." Diana stiffened. "You're not going."
"No," I said.
"I'm not. He doesn't deserve my time, or my attention, or my forgiveness. He's where he belongs. And I have better things to do than listen to whatever manipulative garbage he's prepared." "Good," Diana said. "Because you don't owe him anything. Not a visit. Not forgiveness. Not even a thought." She was right. I'd spent enough of my life on Thomas Garrett. I'd testified against him. I'd watched him get sentenced. I'd helped ensure he'd never be free again. That was enough. More than enough. Now my time, my energy, my life were for me. For my family. For the women I could help. For building something good out of something terrible. The door opened and Emma came running out, Brandon right behind her. "Grandma," she called. "Daddy says I can sleep over.
Can I?
Please?" I looked at Brandon, who shrugged and smiled. "If you're up for it, Mom. Sarah's working a night shift, and Emma really wants to stay with her grandma." "Of course," I said, scooping Emma up. "We can make pancakes in the morning." Emma squealed with delight and ran back inside to tell Sarah. Brandon sat down next to me, putting his arm around my shoulders. "You okay, Mom?" he asked. "I know today must bring back memories."
"Good memories," I said.
"I'm exactly where I want to be, with exactly who I want to be with. I couldn't ask for more than that." "I'm proud of you," Brandon said. "I know I say it a lot, but I am. What you've built, who you've become, it's inspiring. You inspire me every day." "You inspire me too," I said. "You and Sarah. The way you treat each other with respect and equality and love. The way you're raising Emma to be strong and confident. You're breaking cycles, baby. You're making sure the next generation doesn't have to unlearn all the toxic things our generation was taught." "That's because of you," Brandon said. "You showed me what real strength looks like. Not controlling others. Not making people feel small. But standing up for what's right. Fighting for yourself and for others. Building instead of destroying. That's the legacy you're leaving, Mom. And it's a beautiful one." I hugged my son tight, this man who'd become everything I'd hoped he'd be, and more. "Thank you," I whispered. "For believing in me. For standing with me. For being exactly who you are." "Always," he said simply. That night, after everyone had gone home or gone to bed, I sat alone in my living room with a cup of tea. Emma was asleep upstairs in the guest room. Diana had just left. The house was quiet and peaceful and mine. I thought about the woman I'd been 5 years ago. So afraid. So trapped. So certain she was losing her mind. So desperate for someone to believe her. And I thought about the woman I was now. Strong.
Free. Happy.
Surrounded by love and purpose and possibility. If I could go back and talk to that terrified woman on that terrible Thanksgiving, what would I tell her? I'd tell her she was going to survive. That she was stronger than she knew. That the worst thing that would ever happen to her would also be the thing that set her free. That 5 years from now, she'd be hosting her own Thanksgiving dinner, surrounded by people who loved her, running a business that changed lives, and genuinely, deeply happy. I'd tell her to trust her instincts. To speak up. To fight back. To refuse to be small. To demand the respect and love and freedom she deserved. And I'd tell her that even though the road ahead would be hard, even though there would be moments when she wanted to give up, she needed to keep going. Because on the other side of that pain was a life more beautiful than she could imagine. But I couldn't go back. None of us could. We could only move forward, taking the lessons we'd learned, the strength we'd found, the scars we'd earned, and using them to build something better, to help someone else, to change the world in whatever small way we could. I pulled out my phone and opened my email. There were 3 new messages from women who'd read my book. Women who were reaching out for help. Women who were scared and trapped and desperate for someone to believe them. I'd answer them tomorrow. I'd set up appointments. I'd listen to their stories. I'd help them find their strength just as others had helped me find mine. Because that was my purpose now. That was my legacy. Not being the perfect wife or the replacement wife or the victim, but being the woman who survived and thrived and then reached back to pull others through. I looked at the clock. It was after midnight. Thanksgiving was over. But tomorrow would bring new challenges, new women to help, new lives to change. And I was ready. More than ready. I was equipped. I was strong. I was free. And standing at my window, looking out at the stars, I made a promise. To Carol and Margaret and all the women who didn't survive. to the women I'd helped and the women I'd yet to meet, to Emma and all the young girls growing up in this world, to myself. I would keep fighting. I would keep speaking up. I would keep helping. I would keep building a world where women knew their worth, recognized danger, and had the support they needed to escape. Where no woman had to face what I'd faced alone. Where every woman knew she had choices, had power, had people who would believe her and stand with her.
This was my life now.
Not the life I'd planned. Not the life I'd imagined at 25 or 30 or even 55. But it was mine. Authentically, completely, beautifully mine. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. 5 years ago, I came home for Thanksgiving and found my husband gone, left alone with his stepfather who'd been stalking me for decades. It should have destroyed me. It should have been the end of my story.
But it wasn't the end.
It was the beginning. The beginning of discovering who I really was beneath all the expectations and fear and trying to be perfect. The beginning of building a life that mattered. The beginning of helping others find their way out of the darkness. And standing there in my home, in my life, in my hard-won freedom, I understood something profound. We can't always control what happens to us, but we can always control what we do next, how we respond, how we rebuild, how we turn our pain into purpose. Thomas Garrett tried to replace my life with his fantasy. Instead, he freed me to create something far more powerful. A life of meaning, of strength, of helping others, of genuine happiness. And that, I thought as I turned off the lights and headed upstairs to bed, was the best revenge of all. Not just surviving, but thriving. Not just escaping, but helping others escape. Not just living, but living fully, freely, fearlessly. I was 63 years old. I was divorced. I was running a successful business. I was a grandmother. I was surrounded by love. And I had never been happier in my entire life. This was my story. This was my legacy. And I was just getting started. To every woman reading this, listening to this, living through something similar right now, I want you to know something. You're not crazy. You're not overreacting. Your instincts are right. And you are so much stronger than you think you are. Trust yourself. Speak up. Ask for help. Fight back. And know that on the other side of this pain, there's a life waiting for you. A life that's yours. A life that's free. A life that's beautiful. You deserve that life. You deserve respect and love and safety and freedom. You deserve to be seen and heard and valued. You deserve everything. And you have the strength to claim it. I promise you, you do. Because if I could do it, if I could survive and thrive and build something meaningful from the ashes of my old life, then so can you. You're not alone. You're never alone. There are women like me all over the world who've walked this path, who understand, who believe you, and who are ready to help. Reach out. Speak up. Take that first step. And then take the next one. And the next one. Until you're standing in your own life, in your own freedom, looking back at the person you used to be, and marveling at how far you've come. That's my message. That's my hope. That's my legacy. We are stronger than we know. We are braver than we believe. And we are never, ever too old or too broken or too far gone to start over. Happy Thanksgiving. To all of us. To survival. To freedom. To hope. And to the beautiful, powerful, unstoppable women we're all becoming. This is Jennifer Hayes. And this is my story. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to Voice of Jenna so you never miss the next chapter in our world of twists, lessons, and unforgettable moments. Your support means the world to me, and trust me, the stories only get better from here.